I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello all, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast. This is the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. And today I'm joined by Mr. Albert Bramante. He is going to be joining us today. He is a seasoned talent agent with more than 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry. Currently holds a Ph.D. in psychology from Walden University. Additionally, he is a certified hypnotist and an NLP practitioner, bringing a unique blend of psychological insight and practical expertise to his work. Driven by passion for both the performing arts and the human psyche, he embarked on a mission to empower actors to overcome self-sabotage and unlock their full potential. Throughout his impressive career, Dr. Bramante has achieved remarkable success as a talent agent, securing roles for actors in a wide array of productions, including TV shows, films, commercials, Broadway, and off-Broadway performances. I want to give a huge welcome to Albert for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining me today. I cannot wait for our conversation.
Well, I want to first thank you, Noah, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here, and it's such an honor to be able to speak on this podcast, yeah, and share, and hopefully, inspire some people.
Feel free to just share a little bit more about yourself and just share what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for the wonderful intro. So I am a talent agent. I represent actors for film, TV, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover, and I spend most of my time between North Carolina and New Jersey. My office is primarily in New York City, so I represent actors in the New York area, and I've been doing that for the past 21 years. I also have a doctorate degree in psychology, and so I've been doing that as well, where I'm a psychology professor, and I've also, kind of now kind of combined the two, where I'm provide a lot of a performance mindset coaching for actors, and that's pretty much where my interest lies in now is helping people reach their fullest potential, work with any subconscious blocks, fear of success, and all of that.
So, when I did your intro, you mentioned that you were a certified hypnotist. Now,
Hmm.
I have I had recently someone on my show that was he did more in the realms of kind of reading your mind a little bit and was more of a fortune teller, I guess I can
Hmm.
say. And I came up with a good question for that I always wondered. I remember a few years ago, I when I was in high school, we had a hypnotist come to my school, and he did a show involving hypnosis, and he actually hypnotized a few students. And one of the things that he had said during that show was, when I snap my finger, you open your eyes, and whoever they got this random person to stand up there, and the person that they see is going to be their favorite celebrity. Now, I've always wondered when they're under this hypnotic state, does the person they actually see they're a celebrity, or can they are they aware that it's a different person, or that it's just a normal person, and that they just have to pretend and have to just imagine that it is their
It,
favorite celebrity?
it depends upon the degree of what we call trance that the person is in. So it could be, again, the suspension of disbelief, because logically, you're not going to know that that's not the celebrity. You know that on a logical
Mhm.
level. But you're hearing that suggestion, so you're going to get that strong urge to believe that it is. And so, what very often happens, you're tapping into someone's power of imagination. That's what that entails. So, you're really activating a person's imaginative state. And so that they're now imagining that that celebrity is there.
Gotcha. So it's a little bit more of, they kind of are a little aware that it's not
Right.
actually their.
But
Gotcha.
their
Okay.
yeah, their imagination is activated. That's all that is.
Gotcha. Okay. Because it was a woman that they had standing up there as a teacher, and someone was like, "Oh, it's like Dwayne Johnson." And I'm just like, "There's no way you see that." I'm like, and then we
Yeah,
had
well,
like one student up there that kind of had lost the hypnotic under the state after a while, and so he was just faking it. Because we asked him, he said, we were like, "Were you actually under?" And he was like, "I at first, but then after I got out of it, and I was just faking it." I thought, well, well, thanks. I tried to like
yeah,
do it from the audience, but of course, my brain goes about 500 miles an hour. There was someone over here eating chips, and then I started coughing, and I was just like, okay.
yeah. It's interesting because I would almost want to challenge that person who said that they were faking it, because why were you do if you were faking it? Why were you going along with it? That would be sort of the thing that I would say, because the thing about hypnosis is it's not a loss of control. You're completely aware and you're in control of everything up there.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not that you're not aware, you're aware of everything. And you are, there, it's sort of not real, but you're still going along with it anyway. And so I would kind of even challenge that you might have still been in a slight trance state. Maybe not as deep as everybody else was, but the fact, because otherwise he would have just stopped and said, okay, this isn't
Yeah.
working. This isn't working. And would have probably went back to his seat.
Yeah, you can kind of tell that he wasn't as engaging with it as the other ones. Like, I think there was a moment where they wanted everyone to act like a chicken, and some people were like very committed to it, and then he was just kind of doing this, and we're like,
Yeah,
I
I would say
thought,
they're very light, and the one thing you really, in order for it to be effective, is you have to be comfortable, completely comfortable. And it sounds like he probably might not have been. And
yeah,
and that will prevent it. Now, I don't necessarily do that type of hypnosis. I do appreciate, people who do. I'm more of a coaching and clinical aspect of things. So would never ask someone that, cluck like a chicken or imagine a favorite celebrity. But it does show you the power of the imagination, the power of the mind. So, like, for example, if you could imagine that female teacher was Dwayne Johnson, can you imagine how that would work if you imagine yourself being successful? So that's the type of work that I would do in a sense. Okay. Same process, but I would be doing it in a different context.
yeah, because I've heard some people say that they use hypnosis as well to help people that have really bad, strong alcohol, um, things of alcohol. They have a big addiction to drugs, and that
Yeah.
hypnosis helped them get sober and has helped kind of hold
Yeah.
them back from
Be,
doing it.
because there's two things with addiction. There's a habit aspect of it, which is doing things out of habit, and that could be a trigger. It could be the time of the day. It could be a little bit of stress. Somebody pushes your button, so you reach for a drink, or you reach for the drug, or there's a little bit of tension. And then also there's again, the soothing therapeutic aspect of that, the alcohol, the numbing effect that a drug does. So that's where hypnosis can help, especially with the habit aspect of things, and also with whatever emotional things that you're trying to cover up. Because usually when people use drugs, alcohol, or even harder drugs, what's happening is they're usually doing that to numb the pain. They're doing that to cover up some deep-seated emotional problem, or trauma from the past. So that has to be addressed. Now, I do believe in certain drugs and certain medications, if somebody's addicted, they should get medical supervision because you can't always just go cold turkey on on things. So, because especially if there's a physiological process, especially with alcohol, that's why even alcohol withdrawal should be done under medical supervision. Now, you can use hypnosis as an add-on tool, addition to the medical thing, but you should always get medical supervision because stopping something too quickly can put a shock on the body. And we don't want people to be physically endangered in any way.
I think it's a powerful mechanism. While it is entertaining to see someone act like an idiot on stage, it is also very much helpful to people that do use hypnosis as a way to help with struggles that they are facing personally and
Hmm.
helps guide them through it. Um, from you're also an author. You've released a book, and from your book, you discuss the fear of failure extensively. How have artists reframed, um, or how can artists reframe their view of failure to harness it as a stepping stone rather than have it as a setback?
Well, the first thing is looking at failure as feedback only. And to look at the mistakes that you make, first of all, we should always be applauding the fact that you created an action, you put yourself out there. That alone is a major achievement. So that should be celebrated on. The fact that you put yourself out there, the fact that you took an action and were successful in that. So that would be the first thing. And then secondly, even if you mess up, as human beings, we're far from perfect. We'll never be perfect. We're always going to make mistakes. We're always going to have letdowns and things like that. But when you look at failure as saying, okay, it's feedback, it's information that I can use for the next time I'm more successful. Because then at that point, it can be a stepping stone for success because now you know something not to do. So now your next time is going to be even better. Now, because you already have the knowledge of what didn't work. And now, it takes a lot of persistence because a lot of times we give up very easily when we fail. Or once or twice, it's like, okay, that's it. But if anybody, listening here has ever been a parent or worked with children, especially toddlers and preschool, really young children, one of the hardest things they ever have to do is learn to walk. Now, it will take them sometimes weeks and months to perfect their walk. They're going to fall down hundreds of times. But you never see them say, I don't think walking's for me. I'm quitting walking. You don't see that. And you don't see the parents saying, you can't walk or you're not, walking's not for you. Until eventually it becomes second nature to everybody. So if we can adopt that mindset that the toddler has to whether it's starting a business or starting out new ideas. Okay, once or twice you fall down, it's no big deal. Just get back up and do it again. Eventually, as a toddler learns to walk effectively, you're going to be successful beyond measure because you 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 keep putting yourself out there.
You also talk about the concept of the happy file. Can you explain a
Mhm.
little bit more about how artists can use this to boost their self-esteem and motivation?
Sure. The happy file is really just um, a running journal, so to speak, of your achievements, the greatest things that happened to you. So it's like almost like a gratitude journal, but in a different way. So you could definitely put things you're thankful for, but with the happy file, is every little achievement that you make, whether you get a good review from a performance or from a podcast, you get good feedback from a customer or from a client. You then document that. And then with each subsequent documentation, you'll become much better and more efficient. And what happens very often is the way it raises self-esteem is when you're feeling down, or let's say you have the moments of self-doubt that creep in, you pull out your happy thought and it reminds you of all the good things you do. Because usually when we're spiraling into low self-esteem, we delete all of the good stuff that happened to us. We delete all the good stuff and distort everything. So now it becomes well, I don't remember this, or I don't recall when I did a great thing. Well, now with your happy file, you actually have a record of all the good things that you've done, and you pull that out in times of need.
What initially led you to reconnect or led you to connect self-sabotage directly with the challenges faced by performing artists?
Well, when I first started as an agent 21 years ago, um, I was noticing a lot of actors were self-sabotaging. And what I mean by self-sabotaging would be what we call shooting themselves in the foot, being late to appointments, no showing on appointments, a whole host of other things that were happening there. And it was really until when I was going for a PhD for my thesis, I decided to look at self-defeating behavior in performing artists or really self-sabotage. And it really is tied into both your mindset as well as your productivity level, your conscientiousness, your discipline level. And so what I found is that people that are prone to anxiety, which we might say like easily triggered or easily swayed or easily phased by things, and you add that with like faulty business or lazy business practices, or not necessarily being conscientious or disciplined enough. If you combine both of those factors, it's also a recipe for self sabotage. So that was like my biggest way of predicting things. Also, how you view money is extremely important because a lot of people do not have a good relationship with money. And we may have grown up in households or families where we're told that, money is the root of all evil, which is actually misquoted, by the way, because it's really the love of money that is the root of all evil. Money is not evil. Money is a neutral concept. So, but if you internalize the viewpoint that money is bad, then your brain is going to do everything possible to prevent you from making money. And that includes getting in your own way.
How does understanding personality traits like those from the Big Five help artists in their personal and professional lives?
So, well, understanding personality traits, there's five that I talk about, especially in my book, which is openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So I'll start with each one of these. So the first one is openness. Now, in order to be, I guess you could say, somewhat even successful, is you have to be open-minded, trying out new things. So that's what being open to. People that are closed-minded will not try new things. And you could see these people, they'll go to restaurants, they'll go to dinner, and they order the same thing on the menu every time because they're not open-minded. They don't have that openness to experience. So we need to have that openness. We need to have open-mindedness. The next trait is conscientiousness. Now, with conscientiousness, that refers to your discipline, work ethic, performance, and the biggest predictor of success in life is being conscientious and being focused and being disciplined. So that means like, doing what you set out to do, not dropping the ball. And so we need to be kind of higher in that because even as an artist, while artist could be a fun, whimsical occupation, dreamy, but there's also a strong business component to it. That's why it's called show business. So you have to have a business sense. So there has to be some conscientiousness there. Now, extroversion, now, it doesn't mean that necessarily you have to be entirely larger than life extroverted person, but you have to know how to connect to other people and have the ability to connect to other people, especially if, as an artist. And then you have agreeableness. Now, agreeableness is how well you're willing to be coached or be molded in a sense, and how well you follow authority. You need at least some level of agreeableness because the only way you're going to get successful is by getting coached. And a lot of people, believe it or not, are not coachable. They're not agreeable enough. They will disagree with everything you say. And then you have neuroticism, which again, as I kind of briefly alluded to a few moments ago, neuroticism refers to a person's anxiety level or their ability to get bothered by certain things. So a person who is low on neuroticism is very easygoing, and it takes a lot for them to be triggered or to be bothered in any way. A person, on the other hand, who scores high in neuroticism is going to be, have bouts of anxiety that's going to come in momentarily for little reasons. They get really phased easily, bothered very easily. So again, as I said earlier, if you combine the high neuroticism with low in conscientiousness, that's going to equal self-sabotage. And so if we look at these five traits, like really what we call the big five or the five factor model of personality, that those traits come together to really help the person become a more productive person in a sense.
How do you differentiate between toxic high self-esteem and healthy self-esteem?
So there's one word to kind of say that, and that's humility. So a person with high self-esteem, which is healthy and encouraged, by the way, is someone who celebrates their achievements, but they're also at the same time humble, and they're willing to learn and they're willing to accept constructive criticism and feedback. Whereas a person with toxic high self-esteem is going to have a really elevated self-esteem to the point where they think they're better than everybody else. And they think that they're better than the other person. The reason why, and that's linked, it's heavily linked to self-sabotage because you're not going to be open to suggestions or coaching. As a matter of fact, someone with toxic high self-esteem, when you try to give them constructive feedback, they get insulted very easily. Like, how dare you say that to me? And so they're not open to getting that feedback. They're not open to getting coached, and therefore they're stuck in a self-sabotaging loop because they're not willing to get coaching, and as a matter of fact, they're going to make mistakes and not learn from them.
Earlier, you had, when I introed you, had mentioned your remarkable success as a talent agent and that you've secured roles for actors in a wide array of different backgrounds. Who have been some actors that you've helped get into their dream roles?
Well, I worked a lot with working actors in New York. I've helped some people develop get on their first Broadway show. I have not I have a couple of people working in regional theater right now. Like I have a client who's working in the Addams Family the musical, and that was been her target musical for a while. So I was able to help her get on that. I have people who've been on guest spots on Law and Order SVU. Um, and even people who have helped kind of open the door with. There's a couple clients now that are former clients, but I'm still very proud of them, that are now, I have now one who's a series regular on Law and Order SVU. I have someone who's a series regular on the new Dexter show that I used to work with that I'm immensely proud of. So I work with a lot of types of actors in a sense.
Which market is very easy to get a job in? Is it for TV shows? Is it movies, commercials? Which seems to be the best route for desired actors to
It
go into?
it depends upon what your interest is. Now, there's different levels. Like commercials can be more easier because it's more about you're really kind of playing yourself in a commercial, whereas you're not pretending to be a character. But you still have to have improv skills and comedy background. So if you want to get into commercials, what I usually tell people is take some improv training and get some comedy training because you have to think on the fly. Because a lot of times with commercials, you're playing yourself. Whereas if you're playing a character. Now you have to really develop a character. So straight up acting, film and TV and theater acting is a little bit more challenging because now you have to play another character believably well. Because the whole thing about being a good actor is it shouldn't seem like you're acting. You know, like you're reading somebody else's words as your own and making them your own.
Yeah, I recently saw an interview. The woman that plays the character Flo for the Progressive commercial. I remember she had just done an interview with CBS This Morning. It was a interview that they were doing about TV commercials and people that play characters on there. And and I remember she said something along the lines of it was hard to get into it, but it's actually she had been acting for a long period of time doing Broadway shows. She did a lot of numerous acting gigs, and it took her years to
Hmm.
finally get into that. And
Yeah. Hmm. No, I believe that. And well, a lot of people what we see, in their breakout roles because that's where really we just became familiar with the actors who played Flo in a sense. So we became familiar with that from those commercials. But what we don't know is how many years you take, grinding before that by working again Broadway, a little short film, maybe some local commercials. So it took her a while to get to where she needed to get to, in a sense. And a lot of times we see that with even when we hear about like breakout stars. Well, they're not necessarily, that's not their first time. They've been working sometimes 10, 15 years behind the scenes. So
what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who feels overwhelmed by self-doubt and is considering leaving the performing arts?
one thing is I would say, well, first I would want to unpack the reason why they want to leave. And that's because every reason may be different. If it's because of frustration, we'd have to figure out a different approach. So it could be again just the fact that they're not getting any roles, they're not getting booked, they're not getting hired. So what I would often say is first connect to your why, because your why is so important. Like, why did you get into acting? Why did you get into performing arts? What was the reason that you did all of that? And so what I would say is really do that, really be committed to that, really committed to your why in the sense, and then maybe come
You
in with a different approach.
you had introduced techniques for raising self-esteem from your book. Can you share um an instant or a success story of someone who has applied them and that it has actually been really positive for them?
Well, what I can say is definitely, and I've seen this a lot with actors overall, is one thing that's really important is the company that you keep. So if you're around people that are negative and pessimistic, even with their own lives, it's going to rub off on you. So the important thing is to surround yourself with positive people. And that's one of the best ways to raise your self-esteem is because when you're around the environment of positivity and like-minded people, they're going to build you up too. And so sometimes just switching your friend group or hanging out with more successful people is going to raise your self-esteem up. Also, another thing that's really important is to like step outside your comfort zone, do things that are a little uncomfortable, and that can be definitely a challenge sometimes in the beginning to do that. By doing things that will make you uncomfortable, in a sense. So that's another way to kind of raise your self-esteem. So there's various ways, but the biggest one I would definitely say is hang out with people that are going to build you up, not tear you down.
That's great advice. That's what I always tell people as well. when you're in this when you're in a business, whether it's something just personal or one-on-one, or if it's a huge company or anything, you want to be surrounded by people that are going to be supportive of you, that are going to be there for you every step of the way, that are not going to judge you and critique you and tell you that, oh, this isn't something that you're not going to work out. It's very important to have those kinds of people that are supportive, because it'll help you work harder for that goal, and it'll make you feel motivated to keep that dream alive. If you're around people that keep saying, oh, this won't ever work, what you're doing is a waste of time, you're putting so much money into something you're never going to get all that money back, it makes you really feel discouraged, and it makes you not want to pursue that. And then they have to go to the whole midlife crisis of trying to figure out something new they want to do with their life, because the dream that they had been following for years and years and even decades, it's just now start to see it as well, this was a dumb idea. I've wasted so much time now. I don't know what else to do with it. So I think
Hmm.
it's really important that you have a supportive group of people so that you don't feel let down and that you are very much heard in a sense.
Hmm. 100%. And that's the whole thing. You want to be heard, and you want to be seen, and that's the whole thing as well.
Well, Albert, I've appreciated you on the show so much. With the climate, wow, words. With the world of how it is now, it's so hard job wise
Hmm.
everywhere. It's
Of
so,
course.
so difficult now. Even and actors are not dealing with it. People just trying to get on it. Like fast food joints is hard. People that are trying to get into a career that they've studied years and years in school for is hard. And I think your advice will really, really help a lot of people now, especially with this new generation that, new generation's really struggling right now. And sadly, I'm part of it too. I've been struggling to find work and the job that I really want to go in. And I've, I've had to do a lot of what you've mentioned, looking into yourself and surrounding myself with the people that are supportive of me and that they keep telling me it'll happen. Just keep fighting and keep working for your dream job. For people that want to follow you and potentially would like to maybe get some help professionally from them, if they have advice that they would like to ask you, where on can they find you, as well as what social media platforms? Just feel free to promote everything that you got going on.
Sure. Well, you can find me on my website, albertbramante.com. I'm going to have, right now, I have recordings available that you can download for different topics: addictions, performance, public speaking, leadership, business, sports. So feel free to look at that. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram. On LinkedIn, just Albert Bramante. At Instagram, at Dr. Albert Bramante. Please, feel free to follow and also reach out. I always enjoy talking to new people.
Yes, absolutely. Also for your book, where can they find your book at, and is your book available online through your website?
Sure, it's available on Amazon and Kindle, so you can get it. It's called Rise Above the Script: Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists. It is. You can get it as a paperback, an ebook, or an audiobook.
Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you so, so much for joining me today and being on the show. As I always do with all my guests, I'll put off his links, I'll put his social media, his website, and his book in the description so it'll be easy access for my listeners to find. And they can actually just click right off the episode to go straight to that link so they don't have to go searching for anything. You can find me. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok, Lethal Venom Podcast, to keep updates about the podcast and just learn some more behind the scenes stuff. I'm available on Facebook, X, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast as well. And you can also get Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcast from. I'm available on all the big platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora, and other platforms as well. Just follow there on there so you get notified new episodes. I appreciate Albert so much for joining me today, and thank you to all my listeners for tuning in. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and highly suggest you reaching out to him, to Albert. He's given such great advice to me, and I know that any questions you have, he'll be able to answer. But thank you again to everyone listening. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.
Thank you, everyone.